Hello and welcome to another episode of DataCube's free online BI training. Today we're going to be speaking about design. So more specifically today it's just to go over some design basics, some really quick wins to make your dashboards, your reports look, feel and come across a lot more professional, cleaner, minimalist. So we're going to be using 5 key concepts today, using white space, colors, text, so thinking about size, the font, the type, talking about impact, how to create impact and how not to create impact, and also thinking about axes and titles, when to use them, when to not use them. So we're back in Power BI, and what I've done here is I've taken the visuals that we made a few weeks ago and I've just stuck them into one sheet, so kind of like a bit of a dashboard. And well, what do you think? I think carnage. I think this is really hard to really get any information out of. You're just forced with so much stuff in one place, and it kind of makes you kind of like gulp and think, I'm not so sure. I think if I presented this to someone, they'd probably just be overwhelmed with all the different things that are going on. So as you can see at the bottom, I've got 5 steps. I'm going to take you through these 5 steps to which kind of guidance as to kind of what not to do, and just five things that we can do to make your report look a lot cleaner, better and really digestible. So let's speak about step 1. Step 1, white space. White space cannot be underestimated. If we look back to our version 1 of this dashboard, there's really not a lot of room between any of these visuals. So take this donut here. If I click that, I can sort of tell that's a donut, but if I click off, it's really hard to see kind of where that what that legend, what that identifies to. There's no room in between it, nothing can breathe. Things aren't actually overlapping, if we see like between these two for example, but there's literally no room in between and there's no room to think. So white space is key. I'm not saying just have 2 words on a page, but really space things out. We don't want to push things right up into the corners. We don't want to have things really close together and certainly not overlapping. Step 2 is your branding. So really this comes down to colours. So just say for example you were this made up company, there's sort of 3 core colours to your branding. This is actually just a bar chart that I've made and turned basically everything off if you wanted to know how to create something like that. And I just filtered it down to 3 categories, so it's actually looking back at our grocery shop, and then coloured manually, looking at the 3 colours I wanted to colour. So, but this is a good example. Just take 3 colours. So just say for example you're Amazon, you'd have your Amazon orange, the grey, and you might have some other brand guidance that you'd be using. Start that off as a good colour chart, and then work on from there. So that will be used across all your visuals, all your fonts, to make that really consistent. Now what I've done is I've put a link in here which I'll put in the YouTube video as well, and this website is a great way of creating your colour charts. It recommends colours that go well with ones that you may already have, or it's also a really good place to start if you don't have any sort of branding at all. And you can create different types of palettes. So for example divergent and sequential. So sequential is a bit like these 2 blues, so it'd be a sort of light blue to dark blue or a dark blue to light blue, and they're great for showing sort of ranges. And then divergent palettes would be where there's quite a change in the colours, so it might be a blue going to a red, It might have different colours that go in between, and they're great for showing different categories. So for example, if you had ages of people on your database, and you banded those into, say, 6 different bands, because these are different groups but run along the same scale, these might be great for a sequential palette, so you can see the sequence of people getting younger, getting older, whereas divergent, if on your database you had a financial table or something like a grocery shop table where there are different products, you want to be able to really identify between those different products, and a divergent palette which has obvious change between each category is great for that. Another tip is use some pairs. So if you have similar products, use colour pairing, so like a dark blue and a light blue, or a dark green and a light green, to show the ones that are quite similar. So I've just clicked on that link that I recommended for colours, and this is what comes up. So you can create a palette, you can slide between how many colours you need in your palette. So if you need quite a few, you can work it up to 8. You can see what they look like on a dark background or a light background, and with these you can manipulate, so you can change sort of your endpoints. So at the moment this is a palette which is sort of sequential, so just say you wanted a nice grey. I quite like this grey that I normally use, and the other endpoint is like this yellow, and it shows how we can transition from that colour to the next one. You can work off single hue, so if you want to have a sequential palette that works on just one colour, you only put in the start one. So if you put that grey in again, it will just slide over to that blue, and you can only change one end of that. But you can change the brightness of these, so if you just wanted a grey to black or very light blue at one end, and then obviously you can change the intensity here, see how that looks on a dark background, light background, which is really powerful. Again, you can change how many colours you want. And then divergent background, divergent palette, as I mentioned before. So it's just got that transition from one type of colour to another, so green to red. Green might, this works very well on a sort of traffic light system. Again, we can change how many colours. This one actually goes up to 13, which is really powerful. Change your brightness if you want something a bit darker or something very bright, and again with the intensity we can change that. So that's sort of like your almost classic traffic light system in that. Again, you can see how that looks on a dark background. If you scroll down, something that's quite powerful, it shows you what this might look like in context. So if you were to use that in a visual, for example, so our palettes here, this is on a pie chart and a map. As you can tell, this is American. And it's all free to use, and you can simply just copy those hex codes straight on your clipboard. So for example, if I've just copied that, if I open up a notepad and paste those, you've got a nice column there of your colours. So really powerful, quick, free, easy tool. Right, let's move on to step number 3. Step 3 is font. Well, text, size, type. So something that I see in quite a lot of visuals, if we go back to this, is something that Power BI is definitely guilty of doing for you, is having a whole array of different fonts. So for example here, what's this? Consolas. Over here we've got, here we go, Ciojo UI. The axes looks different as well to me, just from eye, but I might be wrong. Yep, there we go, font family Din. So straight away, just from those 3, we've got, this looks different again here, before I move on. Yeah, that's Arial. So straight away we've got 4 different fonts. And I would guess that this is a different one again. Choose one font, stick with it. It may seem like a small thing, but it makes such a difference to how the whole visual looks and the appearance of that. Be consistent, have the same font size throughout. So instead of here where we've got small axes, slightly bigger legend, slightly bigger axes title, much bigger titles on each of these, big text over here for this this note. Have really consistent text size. Don't have it too big, because it takes up so much space. Use that white space, it's very powerful. But also, obviously, you don't want people to be squinting or not being able to make out. So choose a sensible text size, maybe about 10, and a standard Power BI workbook size. So this, sorry, wrong one. This is at 1280 by 720, so a sort of half HD size, and that sort of text size 10 is fine for that. It's a good balance. So choose one font, be consistent with it, use it throughout, use consistent text size, use consistent text type. Let's move on to step 4. Now this may look similar at first, and I'm talking about text again, but I'm actually really talking about impact. So if this was a nice report, I may have a title somewhere saying what this report is supposed to be showing me. So it might be grocery shop, or grocery sales and value, or I might have just taken a few of these and be talking about product or value by product. That's something that does need to take your attention, so you might want to create some impact on that. And the best way of doing that is to do one type of impact. Now this is an example here of using different text size to make impact. So you might have a title, subtitle and text. Here sometimes you might use bold, italic, you might underline, you might change the colour, or you might do a combination of bold, italic, underline, bold, italic, underline, and change the colour. Now the whole point in this is to say just use one type. If you want to create impact, just use one type. The other thing some people do is do full capitals. Now I feel like that's unnecessary, so I haven't actually put that there as an option, but just use one type. So if you've got a title, maybe just make it a bit bigger. You don't need to also underline it, you don't need to make it bold, you don't need to change the colour, you don't need to make it italic, you don't need to make it capitalised. Just use one type. So and be consistent with that. So if you've chosen to go down the bold route, just make something bold to make an impact, but try not to use multiple types of impact combined together. So a bit like text, just be consistent. So let's have a look at step 5. Now step 5 is less of a step and more of a combination of steps 1 to 4. So I haven't created a full dashboard here, it's just one chart on a sheet, but it combines all these. So the first thing you might notice, there's a lot of white space, a lot of room to breathe. Now obviously if I had multiple charts on here, this visual wouldn't be this big, but it definitely doesn't need to be this big. But the thing that's key is there's a lot of space around it, and there's also a lot of space within it. So there isn't any axes titles. This is clearly a date, because we all know that's the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th January. So question whether you need that axes title. This is obviously value. It might be important to say its average value or its total value, but on this case it's just the value split by the day. I've got a very simple legend that runs along the top. The title of the legend is bold, so it's just using one type of impact, and every font on here is the same type and the same size. So this is all using Arial 10, and it's the same for the slicer. So even the drop downs, they're all the same size, it's all the same type. And something that's key about all this and with colours is to not use black. So that's something I've found really important over the years, is to not use black. It's not actually technically a colour. Some people might argue with that. So this is just a grey. This hex code is 667272, and it's just a kind of dark grey, sort of mid dark grey, and it's just a lot less harsh than using black. Something you may notice are the colours. I personally don't really like this palette, but it's just something that I just whizzed up in 10 seconds on that website I showed you earlier. And you can see that I've also paired the colours, so you've got sort of similar colours as they run along that divergent palette there. So I've used a divergent one because these are different products, and so these categorical variables, you can distinguish between them really easily. It's not a transition from aubergine to cauliflower, it's distinct separate products. So I've used a divergent palette there. So that kind of wraps that up, those 5 points: using white space, choosing your colours, make sure they correspond to your brand guidance. These ones, in my opinion, are a bit too harsh, a bit too bright, but they work. You can really distinguish between the different products, and it's not particularly ugly. Text, so I've used really consistent text. It's all Arial, it's all the same size, and I've just used one type. Impact, the only place this page here has any impact is the legend, which is just a simple bold. And I haven't also capitalized it, I haven't made it italic, underlined, I haven't changed the color. And then I've also thought about, do I need any axes labels? I didn't think so. Do I need a title on the whole chart? Probably not. You know, a lot of charts can speak for themselves. The other thing here is the tooltip, so make sure you also change your fonts and colors of the tooltip themselves, so it all matches and corresponds nicely with the visual that you've created. So that's a wrap on today's episode. I hope you enjoyed Design Basics. We've covered 5 key elements there. Next week we're going to be talking about themes. I'm going to be recommending a really good website way of building themes up, so that you don't have to change all your preset options, all your text, all your colors, all your fonts every time you go into Power BI or for every different visual, but a way of importing a theme so it's all created once and saves a lot of time. So make sure you tune in for that. Catch you next week. Thank you very much.